started as we clear some of the tables. I'd like to welcome you all to our annual Wildcat Program Pre-Prom event. We put this together several years ago with a grant, and it's grown and grown and grown into something that other schools are starting to emulate, starting to model. And we're proud that we've been able to put this together as a community to be able to take care of our kids as prom time creeps up on us ever so quickly. Tonight's events will be similar to last year in scope, but very different in presentation. Our presenters bring messages from personal experiences, as well as from experiences they travel and speak in all the other communities across the nation. I want to remind people, this is being videoed. It is something we're trying to keep and pass along, but we want to also be respectful of others, and please put your cell phones to vibrate, or silent, or off. We would appreciate that. My name is Eric Tracy. I'm the principal of the high school. This is the time of the year where things start to get exciting, start to heat up, and start to really begin to bring us together as a family. We travel with our kids 200 and 300 at a time without any issues or any problems to date. We've been very lucky and very successful. I think it's because of the hard work we put in, but I also think we have great students who are mindful of each other, responsible, and respectful. Everywhere we take them, people tell us, "I can't believe it. Your kids are so polite. They say thank you, they say please." And it obviously doesn't happen when other schools go to proms and go to these big events, but here I can be proud that all of our students are always thought of as the top of the heap and the best as we go out and about. And for me, that gives me bragging rights with all the other principals when I go to meetings. These events give us bragging rights to show that we really care about our kids. And not only our high school kids, because I know there are some younger kids here as well, as I look through the crowd. That message travels on. And it's important for us to be able to preserve these young lives in such dangerous times, not only from issues relating to teens and growing up and drinking and drugs, but also from all the other things that are around them. So it makes me proud to be able to work with all of you as a member of the team to keep our kids safe, keep our kids sound, and make sure they're all there on that great day of graduation when we walk across that stage, get our diplomas, and finally move off into the big world. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into a quick raffle. The PAC president, Kim Lambert, has been running this. They've been working this raffle for about 2 or 3 months now. Please welcome our PAC president, Kim Lambert. We're going to draw these backwards from third place, which is $1,000. This was a $50 raffle. This is $1,000 for third place. I'm sure it's your parents, Michelle. And the winner is third place, ticket 027, Sheila Carter. Second place for $1,500, ticket number 104, Katie LaLasher. Oh yeah, you have to be here to win. No, I'm kidding. Before I pull the final one, I just want to mention that the PAC does this raffle along with several other fundraisers during the year so that we can, as we approach the senior events, including the scholarship night, they have sizable scholarships to give out to a number of the seniors. And it's again, one of those nights where we really get excited and proud about what we can do as a community for our kids. We really appreciate the hard work of the pack and thank them all. I know some of them are here, but not all. But the final winner, first prize, $2,500. Ticket 047, Denise Shanning. Thank you very much. There are many legal aspects that surround the events that we run from this point of the year all the way until the end, both in school and out of school. Tonight we have the pleasure of having a representative from Campbell, Edwards, and Conway Law Firm with us tonight, who is a person who's been heavily involved in Be a Parent, Not a Pal program. I'd like to introduce Attorney Richard Campbell.
You hear me? That's good. My name is Dick Campbell. I'm a lawyer in Boston, Massachusetts, and it's really wonderful to see that everybody in Wilmington left their homes to come here tonight to listen to a lawyer. Oh, you mean this is not voluntary? I never would have guessed. I am a trial lawyer, and what that means is that, in a sense, I deal with a different kind of lottery than what you just saw and what you just participated in. The lottery that I deal with involves both the civil and criminal laws that apply to me, to you, and to everybody else here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've given this presentation, which I coined maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, Be a Parent, Not a Pal, maybe somewhere between 150 and 200 times. And I've given it to many of the school systems throughout the Commonwealth, and I've given it outside of the Commonwealth and, in fact, outside of the country. Other members of our law firm give it too, and it's entirely a pro bono activity on our part. We don't charge for our services. We seek nothing from it, but hopefully to save some of you parents some trouble, some serious trouble, and to save a few lives along the way. My personal involvement in the issue of social host liability goes all the way back to about 1984, 83, something like that, when I was asked to represent a retired Roman Catholic nun by the name of Ruth Langeman. And Ruth was retired on Cape Cod and went to a dinner at some octogenarian friends, a real wild and crazy dinner those 80-year-olds have. On the way home from that dinner, a 17-year-old kid who was smashed, having attended an unsupervised party at a home, at a private home, quite drunk and operating a car, crashed into her and catastrophically injured her. So I was one of the lawyers involved in that case and involved in effectively creating what is now colloquially referred to as social host liability in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That law, primarily a civil law, began in about 1987. I think the Supreme Judicial Court came down with its opinion. I feel like I'm in a Shakespearean theater in the ground. I don't know where the hell to look. But in any event, that law, civil law, was founded basically in 1987 and 1988 by the Supreme Judicial Court, and really focused in on an adult who had a private party at a home and carelessly and negligently allowed other adults to consume alcohol to excess, get into a motor vehicle, and drive away. The Langeman case went up to the Supreme Judicial Court, which is our highest court in the Commonwealth, with a case called McGuigan, which came out of Lowell and involved another party at a private home. At the time, 18 years of age was the legal drinking age, and you all know now that's no longer the case. And the McGuigan case, he was the host. He got drunk, his buddy drove the car, they were completely smashed, and as they were driving about, McGuigan got sick, hung his head out the window to retch, whereupon his friend driving the car lost control of it and sideswiped the telephone pole. So these are examples of the horribly tragic events that produce and underscore social host liability. That remains sort of the status quo for a long time, until the year 2000, when our general court, the legislature, changed the law, and that's what I'm here to talk about, the change in the law. The change in the law came about because of a house party given by the Lennons in Cohasset, Massachusetts. Two of their kids had graduated, one from Thayer Academy down in Braintree. You probably know of it. They have great hockey teams. And the older daughter graduated from a 4-year liberal arts college in the same year, so the Lennons, wealthy people, decided that they were going to run a party at their house in Cohasset, a very leafy suburb. And they tried to do everything. They invited faculty, their friends, fellow graduates of the high school and the college. They served alcohol. They had alcohol present at the site. And a young kid by the name of Smith consumed the alcohol at the site to excess. He was supposed to stay over at the Lennon's house. It was the sleepover. All you parents and sleepover is a euphemism for kids getting drunk in a private home. Think of that. I'm sorry to blow the whistle on all the kids here, but that's indeed what it is. In any event, Smith got into his car drunk and tried to make a trip from Cohasset down to Marshfield, driving on those undulating, narrow New England roads like you see up here north of Boston. And right along the travel surface of the road, there are these wide girth trees that are immovable. Smith almost made it home, but he contacted one of those immovable trees and killed himself. The Smith's parents then ultimately went to the legislature and changed the law in a way that affects every single person in this hall. It doesn't matter whether you're 14 or 40. It doesn't matter whether you're underage as a minor or underage as an adult, or you are of age. The law now affects you, and it can affect you in ways that are quite significant. It can take your freedom from you. So let's talk about that law. This case here, Commonwealth versus Neram, addresses the criminal social host statute. And you'll see the alphanumerics up there, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 34. Those numbers and letters just mean the criminal social host statute. So what does the law of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts say? It provides that whoever furnishes alcohol for a person under 21 years of age shall be punished for a fine up to $2,000 and imprisonment for up to a year or both. So like all criminal statutes, the lawyers in the audience will know this, every criminal statute addresses a group of people who are going to be regulated. That's the whoever. So the statute regulates the conduct of whoever. And the conduct that's regulated is furnishing alcohol to a person under the age of 21. So Brendan Neram here, he's standing up in the district court up in Newburyport. He has pled guilty to violation of that criminal statute. He had run a house party and furnished alcohol to his friends and to himself. All of them were underage. He was 19 at the time. He was a little older at the time that he's standing before this court. And one of his friends, Billy White, got into a pickup truck, drove away from Neram's house, and smashed the pickup truck into those two kids who were walking hand in hand across from the Newburyport High School. No sidewalks, not well lit, probably not unlike some of the roadways here in Wilmington. And Neram is now in front of a district court judge, and he is speaking to the court, trying to convince the court just how sorry he was so that he wouldn't go to jail. And I'm sure the advice that he got from his lawyer was, plead guilty, don't worry about it, you'll get a slap on the wrist, everything will be fine. But Trista Zink, age 16, was dead, and Neil Bornstein, age 17, had a severe brain injury. This is what Neram said to the court. At the time, my actions seemed harmless. But now, I know all too well how terrible the outcome can be. If only I could have stopped Billy, this entire tragedy would not have happened. This constantly torments me. Now, but if you think about it, here's the young fellow who's being charged. He's just pled guilty. And what does he say to the court who's about to sentence him? If only I could have stopped Billy. It wasn't about him. He didn't even recognize his own culpability standing before this district court judge. If only I could have stopped Billy, meaning don't let Billy get in the car, rather than if only I had abided by the law and not purchased the alcohol and not furnished it to others who are underage. Well, he was really tormented when the judge sentenced him to a year in jail. A year in jail. He was a student at Syracuse University, I think, at the time. So what does a young fellow in the United States like Brendan Neerum, who comes from a family that has the financial wherewithal to hire lawyers and challenge something like this, do now that he's looking at jail time? Well, Brendan fired lawyer number one and hired lawyer number two. And lawyer number two, a legal genius, came in to the court and said, wait a minute, there cannot be a guilty plea here because Brendan cannot be guilty of the crime charged because Brendan, you see, was underage himself. He wasn't 21 years of age, so he could not plead guilty to the crime that he was charged with. Judge Kantrowitz on our appeals court, which is our intermediate appellate court here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, wrote this in his opinion. He wrote, in this tragic case, we hold that whoever, the people who are regulated, 14 to 40, 50 or 60, whoever is everyone in this room, young, not so young, in between. We hold that whoever, as used in the criminal social host statute, furnishing alcohol to a person under 21 means precisely that. As such, the defendant, a young college student with no criminal record, will serve a jail sentence, the sadness of which is overshadowed by the death of a 16-year-old child struck by another to whom the defendant furnished alcohol. So now we know from the Neerum case that the scope of the statute in terms of who's being regulated by the statute is unbelievably broad. Whoever represents the class of people that's being regulated. Think 14 to 40. 50, 60, 70. It's not just the parents in the hall, it's the kids. It's not just the kids who are over 18 and under 21 who are adults but not legally able to drink. It's the kids who are under age 18. And we found the application of statutes like this with this language all the way down to 14-year-olds. So, let's go back to the change in the law. In 2000, after Lennon was charged criminally following the death of Smith, he was acquitted. He was found not guilty because the prosecutors were unable to demonstrate evidence that alcohol was physically delivered by Lennon to young Smith. And the Smith's parents then went to the legislature and said, this is wrong. We can't have people furnishing alcohol or furnishing premises at which alcohol is served to young people because tragic consequences come about, like what happened to their son. Before the change in the statute, the conduct, furnishing alcohol to somebody who's underage, was defined as supply, give, or provide. Now that's pretty easy to understand, isn't it? Supply, give, or provide. Here, Billy, here, young Smith, here's the beer. Here's a cup, go over to that keg and drink the beer. That's pretty easy to understand. In 2000, the Commonwealth changed the law and expanded it again, quite dramatically. Now, it is a crime to supply, give, provide, or allow an underage person on property that you have dominion and control over to possess alcohol. It is a crime to allow them to possess it. You have to act knowingly and intentionally, but if you do so, if you knowingly and intentionally allow an underage person to possess alcohol on premises that you have dominion and control over, you are committing a crime. That means your house, of course, or your apartment, or your condo, or your beach house, or your house up in the mountains, or Or it could mean the room at the Marriott that you rent for your kids at prom time. If you have dominion and control over that space, and you knowingly and intentionally allow them to possess alcohol, you commit a crime in this Commonwealth. Now I show this slide. I showed this slide to a lot of audiences just so that you can understand that the Massachusetts social host laws, criminal and civil, are being replicated throughout the United States. That chart just is, the takeaway from the chart is that one variation or another of social host law, criminal or civil, is being adopted in most states in the United States. And what does that tell us? It tells us that we are really at the beginnings of significant change in the application of our civil and criminal laws to conduct of this type. We're not at the end of the road, we're at the beginning of the road. Those of us who are old enough in this hall to remember the days when people could get into their pickup trucks after work, having stopped at a local pub and consumed a few martinis or a few beers, will remember that back in the 70s or 60s, drunk drivers were slapped on the wrist. Even if they hurt or killed somebody, they were slapped on the wrist. Well, that doesn't happen anymore, does it? If you are driving drunk and you hurt or kill somebody, you go into jail, and you're going to go to jail for a long time. That change in society, that societal change, is underway now with respect to social hosts. So I just argued a case called Giuliano versus Simpson before the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. I argued it the first Tuesday after Labor Day, and the Supreme Judicial Court just came down with its decision, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago at the most. In that case, the court was presented with a situation where underage people, adults, 19-year-olds but underage, held an illegal drinking party where each of the underage people brought their own alcohol to that party. And the court said in that circumstance that the 19-year-old woman that held that party was not responsible for the brain injury, severe brain injury, that Rachel Giuliano suffered. She was a 16-year-old girl who attended that party. She was in an automobile accident not 3 football fields from that house. She's probably 19 or 20 now, and she's effectively a 10-year-old girl in that body forever. So the court, looking at this on the civil side of things, said, insofar as a claim is made on the civil side against underage adults or underage minors who host a BYOB party, they will not be civilly liable for the injuries and damages that they bring about. But the court specifically refrained from holding that same rule of law would apply to an adult. So if somebody 21 years or older holds a BYOB party at their home and somebody's injured or killed, civil liability is very likely to ensue. That Giuliano case really didn't change anything because it was a civil case. It didn't affect the criminal statute at all. So that same 19-year-old girl, Jessica Simpson, had she been charged criminally, and she was not, had she been charged criminally by the police, had she been prosecuted on the facts and circumstances of that case, she would have been found guilty, and she could have been sentenced to jail for up to a year. That law still remains the same. So,
this is very tough, but it's very hard sentence. It's very harsh, and don't even a parking ticket or anything. I was trying to save him, and I did. Nothing happened. But this, I just think, I shouldn't be the poster child for everything, but, it's amazing to me that there's so many parties still going on. You see it in the paper, you see it everywhere, but nothing's happening. They're not getting prosecuted, nothing's happening.
That is the statement of a woman who, with her husband, now ex-husband, held a party for their 18-year-old son and provided the alcohol. The logic was, and you've all heard the logic, that she and her husband concluded that these kids would be better off consuming alcohol in their home than consuming it out in the woods or in cars or whatever. So they were going to provide a theoretically safe venue for the kids to consume alcohol. They were going to, as I like to put it, she was going to reach her arms out around these kids and draw them to her bosom and protect them forever. Well, didn't quite work out this way. This was in Virginia. The police came, busted up the party. Nobody was hurt, nobody was killed. Let me say it again. Nobody was hurt and nobody was killed. The police nonetheless charged this woman under Virginia law. She was prosecuted, she was tried, and she and her husband were convicted. The trial judge sentenced them to 8 years in jail. They were wealthy enough where they could take an appeal to the Supreme Court of Virginia. The Supreme Court of Virginia upheld the conviction, but reduced the sentence from 8 years to 2 years. They served 2 years in jail for holding a party for kids who are underage, where no one was hurt and no one was killed. And I show this so that hopefully both the adults in the hall, the parents in the hall, and the kids in the hall will see this and say, that ain't happening to me. That ain't happening to me, it's not happening to my kids, and this kind of conduct's not going to take place in my home when I'm in charge. Next thing I want to bring to your attention is the manslaughter statute. Every state in the United States has a manslaughter statute. Manslaughter, unlike murder, is defined as the unlawful killing of another without malice. Murder is with malice. A person in the Commonwealth can be found guilty of manslaughter by reckless behavior, reckless conduct. The reason I bring this to your attention is that the penalties for manslaughter ratchet everything up unbelievably. Instead of a year in jail, now you're looking at up to 20 years in jail. So if you engage in reckless behavior that results in the death of a human being, you can be charged with manslaughter. And as I walk you through some of these slides, think about that concept. Now, for years, I would bring this slide to the attention of audience, and I very often give this presentation with district attorneys or with the Attorney General. And I remember Martha Coakley, when she was Middlesex DA, getting up right after I showed the slide, saying, "Oh, don't worry, parents, that never happens. We never charge anybody with manslaughter." Well, here's a kid, Alexi Garcia, age 15, died from alcohol poisoning in East Hampton. Her best friend was a girl named Parent, and Parent's parent gave his daughter a handle of vodka as a birthday present for her 16th birthday present. So think of a 1.75 liter of alcohol as the gift to your 16-year-old daughter. So Mr. Parent gave that. The two girls, about 30 days after the birthday gift, went off in Lexi's house and consumed it. Lexi and the other girl got hammered. She went upstairs to take a shower. They found her very dead, drowned in a bathtub. Now, why do I tell you that? Why do I tell you that this beautiful 15-year-old girl, I mean, look at her, she's gorgeous. Why do I tell you that? That's because Mr. Parent, I don't have the slide, but Mr. Parent was charged with manslaughter. Now, ultimately, they resolved the case short of manslaughter, but I guarantee you, after Lexi died, he felt terrible, and when he was charged with manslaughter and was looking at a potential jail term of 20 years, he really felt terrible. Now, again, for the lawyers in the audience and for anybody really with any sense of the system of laws that we have here in the United States knows that in the law there are very few bright lines. There are always shades of gray in everything, except here. Here, we have an unbelievably bright line. On one side, it's illegal. On the other side, it's legal. And that bright line is 21 years of age. It's not 20 years, 10 months, and a few days. It's 21 years of age. If you want to comply with the law, you pay attention to that. If you don't, you run the risk of losing your freedom and perhaps your fortune. Now, how many here in this hall read the Herald? Okay. How many here have heard of a newspaper in Boston called the Herald? There you go. The Herald, after the Lennon case, wrote an editorial dealing with with the Lenin case, and the Herald, like any tabloid, has a way with words. You know, they can take a concept and reduce it down to the simplest sense, and that's what they did here. They wrote in an editorial, the legal age for drinking in Massachusetts is 21. That's the law. What part of it don't some people understand? Well, there you go. What part of it is tough to understand? It's 21. You want to abide by the law. You want to set a good example for your kids. You abide by the law. You don't allow underage persons to consume alcohol, to possess alcohol on your property, your premises, and under your dominion and control. Some examples of how things can go wrong. Here's a kid from Haverhill, Michael Berry. Now look at that kid. Seriously, look at this kid. Can you imagine feeding alcohol to that kid? Seriously, I mean, Michael Berry, age 16, went to a regular Friday party at the St. Jean house. Ms. St. Jean was one of these parents who wanted to be a pal and wanted to provide a safe place for her daughter to have parties. And I'm getting not quite the hook, but I'm getting close to the hook over there in the corner. Michael Berry went to that party. He got a couple of beers into him. His testosterone got elevated to out of control status. So the kids told him to leave, and as he was leaving, to prove that he was a real man, he punched out the lighted glass in the kitchen door. Now the only problem was that lighted glass was plate glass. It wasn't tempered glass, and when it broke in long shards. One came down and clipped a major artery in his forearm. They found him shirtless and dead in a snowbank 3 days later. Here's Megan Duggan in Andover. She went to the Zarella party in Andover. Again, now Mr. Zarella's upstairs. He allows the kids to come to his house for a party. Megan Duggan is there. She gets into a verbal tiff with the Zarella girl. And I've heard it said that girls sometimes can get angry with each other. So but they're drinking. When the police came, by the way, they found over 500 empty cans of beer in the Zarella basement. Megan Duggan and the Zarella girl are having a fight. And Megan falls 1 step or 2 steps onto the basement floor. 1 step or 2 steps. That's the height that she fell. She hit her head on the basement floor. The kids then were walking over her body thinking that she just passed out. She hadn't. Mr. Zarella came down, stepped over her body, thinking that she had passed out. She hadn't. She had suffered a basilar skull fracture and exsanguinated through her ears. She bled out through her ears. Some data to show you, because some of your kids are going to be going on to college. This is data from Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. 75% of the males, 55% of the female college students had been drinking or using drugs when a rape occurred, when a date rape occurred. This is from one of the W suburbs west of here. Let me stop. I'll stop. Thanks for your time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. It is hot in here. Take a minute to stretch your legs if you need to. Try and get everybody back into the gym. Every school year, I meet with the kids before we send them off to the prom. Tell them about all the little things. You know, hey guys, if it's raining, bring an umbrella. You might need a watch to keep track of your picture times, things like that. But I also tell them it's one of the longest nights of my life. For good reason. It's one of those nights where I have 2 girls at home that are my own, and I have usually 275 to 325 kids of ours to be responsible for. It's not a night you can sleep if you're a high school principal, but it is a night you'll always remember. And I always tell the kids, I don't want to get that call. I don't want to see something on NECN, and I don't want to have somebody send me an email that says, hey, by the way, our kids are very important to us, cherished in this town, very important to the community. And this next presenter talks a little bit about what that loss is like. Please help me welcome our next presenter, Mr. Barry Adkins.
Thank you, Eric. I need to move this podium a little bit because sometimes I don't pay a lot of attention and I might walk right into it while we're talking here. So a couple things for you guys in the back. Maybe a little bit tough to see me. Let me describe myself for you. I'm about 6'4", muscular build, and a full mane of hair, man. No, actually, I had something happen to me about a year ago that sort of indicates the passing of my youth. I was at a McDonald's and I ordered a cup of coffee. The lady looks at me and says, would you like the senior discount? And I said, no. I'm not old enough. She looks at me and says, close enough. It is sad. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about decision making. You guys have a lot of decisions to make in the next few years. You got to decide where you want to go to school next. What kind of car am I going to drive? Am I going to drive a Yugo? Am I going to drive a Camaro? Where am I going to go after that? Am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to be a lawyer? All of those sorts of things. But the two most important decisions you will ever make in your life are about drugs and alcohol. And you make the wrong decision about one of those, and I guarantee you everything else will not matter. I'm here to tell you a story about my son Kevin and about how that decision worked out for him. What kind of kid was Kevin? Well, you guys can see that picture, right? He was a redneck. That was his senior picture. He's got the big belt buckle there and the cowboy hat. He would like to tell you that he rode in the rodeo, but to my knowledge, he never did. But a neighbor once described Kevin best. He said that Kevin had been brought up right and that Kevin knew wrong from right. He said that doesn't guarantee Kevin will never do anything wrong, but he's been brought up right, and he knows the difference between wrong and right. Kevin was never in any trouble in school or with the law. The extent of his involvement with the law was when he got a speeding ticket when he was 16 years old. His high school principal didn't even know who he was. And I considered that a very good thing. When Kevin was younger, and I had to go to the, parent-teacher conferences and that sort of stuff, they would always tell me about what a kind and gentle heart he had. He had a friend in elementary school by the name of David. And David was in a wheelchair. I don't know what was wrong with David's legs, but that was the only thing that was wrong with him was his legs didn't work. But Kevin didn't care. Kevin would push David around in his wheelchair at school, and when they could talk David's mom into it, she would drop him off at our house. And as little elementary school boys do things unusual, they always left his wheelchair at the front door. Kevin would grab David by the arms and drag him around the house, or David would army crawl. And his mom got to the point where she just brought him a change of clothes because she knew he was going to be filthy when he left our place. As Kevin got older and he got in high school, he got his cell phone and his driver's license. And he would come home and tell me about how he'd stop beside the road and help somebody, help him change a tire, or he'd give somebody a ride somewhere. which honestly scared me to death. I mean, he would tell me about how they stopped on the freeway to change a tire for somebody, and it scared me, but I always figured as long as his heart was in the right place, it would be okay. I was talking to one of his buddies about that just recently, because they seem to all do it. It turned out that it wasn't really all that noble. They believed in this thing called karma, and they were all driving broken down old trucks, and they figured that if they didn't stop and help somebody, there's a pretty slim chance somebody would stop and help them. So Kevin got into high school, and I'd be the first to tell you he was not exactly a good student. In fact, he was borderline. So in his senior year, he had an older sister named Cassandra that gave birth to a baby boy by the name of Colin. They were both still living at home, and she was going to school and working, trying to get her affairs in order so she could get out on her own. And this meant we had to watch this baby boy, his nephew. Kevin's responsibility started at about 8 o'clock at night, and most nights when she got home from school, he would be asleep in her room with Colin. His nephew Colin will have no memory whatsoever of Kevin. But as I said, he was a pretty lousy student. And I found out in March of his senior year that he was flunking his English class, and he needed it for graduation. I was not a happy camper. So I would constantly call his teacher to check on things, to make sure he turned in all his assignments, and yes, he was there, and everybody's happy, and yes, we're going. She had a little bit of a sense of humor, and she knew what would motivate him. Not sure you get away with this anymore, but she would walk into class and in front of everybody make sure that Kevin knew that his daddy called to check on him. And he hated it. But it worked. He got his grades up, graduated from high school, went to his high school graduation. Of course, he was trying to play cool like it was no big deal, but he kept looking over, make sure we were watching him. After the graduation, he gave me a hug and said, "Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad." So he had graduated from high school. He had a job. He's making good money. He was tired of driving an old 81 Ford. So I finally agreed to co-sign a loan so he could buy a new truck. And since we have parents and students in here, I will tell you, I made him give me 3 months' worth of insurance and payments before I was going to co-sign any loan for him. There's no way. I was hoping he would find something in Auto Trader or something like that, but he found a truck at a dealership. And I apologize if we have anyone in here that works at dealerships, but going to sign papers on a car, I don't think so. Sure enough, I go down there, we sit down in the financial guy's office, and he looks at me and says, "How about some life insurance?" There we go. I said, "No thanks. I've got plenty of life insurance. My wife will do just fine if something happens to me." And he looked at me and said, "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your son." And I rather indignantly told him that 18-year-old boys don't need life insurance. They don't die. But I was wrong. They do. Kevin wouldn't live long enough to make a single payment on that truck. So he had just graduated from high school. He's got this brand new truck. He's making decent money as an electrician's helper. You guys can probably guess what the next thing an 18-year-old guy wants to do. He wants to get out on his own. Kevin came in the living room one day, and I still remember it very distinctly. He sat down in his brown chair that has a view of our backyard. And he sat in that brown chair and he started telling me about how he couldn't believe that his life was just beginning, that it was finally beginning. He was my youngest. I'd never had any problems with him. I tried to talk him out of it, but I didn't have any luck. So a few weeks later, on a Saturday, he started the process of moving out on his own. And like 18-year-old guys do this sort of stuff, he waited till 5 o'clock at night to start moving out. So his friend Craig and I helped him throw a bed, a TV, and a dresser in his truck. That was the extent of his packing for the day. He came back in, went into his room, picked up a clean pair of wrinkled jeans off of the floor, and put them in the dryer to de-wrinkle. I know nobody has this problem at their house, but at my house there was clean wrinkled clothes on the floor, dirty clothes right next to it. And he had to walk right by the hamper to get out of his room. So he threw those jeans in the dryer to de-wrinkle, and he came in and said he was going to brush his teeth now. He said he didn't want to take his toothbrush with him, and he'd be back tomorrow and get it. So he brushed his teeth, put on his jeans. I walked out front with him, gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and to be careful. Stood out front and watched him drive away. It was the last time I would see him alive. That night, his buddies decided to throw a little housewarming party for him. There were somewhere between 15 and 25 kids at this party, ages ranging from 14 to 28, which I don't think 28 is really a kid, but there was a 28-year-old at the party. They started with a keg of beer. Around midnight, they started doing shots. Best we can tell, he did 6 or 7 double shots of either Jack Daniels or Jägermeister. A short time later, he left a voicemail for his sister. And we're going to play that voicemail for you, but let me describe it a little bit because it's a little garbled. His name is Kevin. His sister's name is Cassandra. He talks about how he loves Colin more than anything in the world, how drunk he is. I believe he actually says, I just took 6 or 7 shots in a row. So let's go ahead and play that. The Mikey that came on at the end was the 28-year-old that owned the house. I believe that is referred to as drunk dialing. Kevin passed out a short time later, and his friends decided to lay him in his bed on his side in case he vomited. The party was still going on. They actually went in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out. But his buddy Craig was worried about him, and the only thing he knew to do was to go in and check on him every half hour or so. Sometime around 4 a.m., Craig found Kevin not breathing. The first calls to 911 indicated difficulty breathing. The next calls or not breathing. My son was pronounced dead, alone in a hospital, while I slept peacefully in my bed. The next morning, Sunday morning, I got up as usual. Sunday morning, Bev and I, my wife, were doing things that couples do on Sunday morning. We're reading the paper, talking about what we're going to do that day, and I'm mostly trying to get out of doing things. And around 8:30, we get the doorbell rings. We look at each other. Who's coming to my house at 8:30 on a Sunday morning? Come on. I open the door and I see two police officers and somebody in plain clothes at the front door. Still doesn't click. I'm thinking, this must have to do with something that happened in another house. There could be no other reason for somebody to be at my house, for a cop to be at my house at 8:30 on a Sunday morning. There's no other reason they would be there. The two officers walked in. The plainclothes person and one of the officers sort of stayed in the entryway. One of the officers walked in, stood in front of that brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before, and told me about how his life was beginning. He said there'd been an accident and that your son is dead. And for a moment, I thought they were talking about one of my wife's sons from a previous marriage. She asked who, and as the saying goes, my life was changed forever. It was my son, Kevin, and he handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license, because until that moment, you're holding out hope. This is all a big mistake, man. You need the Kevin Adkins that lives 2 towns over, or lives in Massachusetts, not Arizona, or lives next door. Not the Kevin Adkins that lives here. But when they hand you his driver's license, you know he's gone and he's not coming back. One of us finally asked what the probable cause of death was. The officer said, more than likely it's alcohol poisoning. We found out later that that was indeed the case. Kevin's blood alcohol content was 0.36%. Pretty drunk, right? When the coroner called to tell me those results, we talked about it a little bit. And she said that she had seen as low as 0.24% kill specifically teenagers in Arizona. That is the extent of the statistics that I'm going to share with you. And the only reason I tell you that is because when somebody's passed out, you don't know how much trouble they're in. There is no way to get an app or to decide, oh yeah, he's fine, I just checked it online, he's good to go. You don't know. There are a number of variables that go into that. You simply don't know. Telling his sisters that he was dead was by far the most difficult thing I had to do. I called up a friend who came over and drove me to Cassandra's apartment. She had moved out with Colin at that point. And when we got to Cassandra's apartment, she was excited because Bev was with me and my buddy was with me, and she thought we were just stopping by to say hi to her new apartment. Bev walked in and grabbed Colin and went in the bedroom with him. And I put my hands on her shoulders. And I started crying before I could tell her. And I said that Kevin was in heaven. And she slid down the wall and started crying. A short time later, Kevin's other sister arrived. She knew it was bad news when she walked in. I told her that Kevin was in heaven. And she fell to the floor and started crying and asking somebody to wake her up. Somebody, please, please wake me up. She was hoping it was a bad dream. A bad dream that we all have, and when you wake up, where do you feel it? Right here. But for us, it wasn't a bad dream. He was gone and he wasn't coming back. The only thing I can say about the next few days is they're very dark. People often say they can't imagine what it's like. And I will tell you, that is correct. You can't imagine what it's like. At Kevin's memorial, we asked people to write down their favorite memories of Kevin. And there were just numerous stories of how helpful, kind, and polite he was. And for the parents in here, it was one of those things where I'm reading all this stuff and I'm thinking, is this really my kid? Because if I wanted Kevin to do something, he wouldn't do it. But if he's with a friend and their parents ask him to do something, he always did it. I spoke at Kevin's memorial. Here in part is what I said. Many of you have asked, what can I do to help? Well, here's what you can do. Each of you can make something very good come from this. I don't know if it's one something very good or 1,000 something very goods. It might be a tiny something very good or a huge something very good. But I am convinced that good things can come from this. I don't know who, what, when, where, how, but I know that it will. I ask each of you to find that something very good and make it happen. That is what you can do for us and for Kevin. So as I said, there's just so many very painful things to do. Imagine going to a mortuary to make decisions about what to do with your child's remains. We had Kevin cremated, and a couple weeks later, I got a call from the funeral home. Very polite person said, Kevin's remains are ready to be picked up. I immediately got in the car and I drove down there. Very nice people, don't get me wrong. They took me in to this office, sat down at a really nice desk. The lady walks in and sets an urn on the desk. All you parents, I want you to take a second and think about sitting in that chair. That precious child, all that remains of him are in that urn. One of the decisions that I had to make when Kevin died was whether I was going to allow myself to become a victim or whether I was going to do something about it. And I thought, what would I hope somebody else would do if this sort of thing happened to them? And the answer was pretty clear. So I decided to walk with his ashes from Arizona to Montana, stop at schools just like this along the way and tell the story. I had grown up in Montana, and Kevin always talked about wanting to move there someday and buy a ranch. So I decided to take him up there and leave him there. It's 1,400 miles. I stopped, I don't even remember, probably 50 times and spoke at different schools along the way. For the record, I went through 5 pairs of shoes. As you think about what you've heard, if you're ever in that situation, you're going to have to make that call. If you see somebody passed out, the solution is to get them to help. I told this story to a school in Phoenix, and I got an email a couple weeks later. There had been a party. One of the kids that was at that party had heard my presentation There was a kid that was passed out. They argued about whether to call 911. This kid lost the argument, so he put him in his car and took him to an urgent care facility near there, who promptly called 911, airbagged him out, and saved his life. It took guts for that kid to do that, and by the way, he got in trouble because they were all drinking at the party, but he did the right thing. The right thing is not always the easy thing to do. So when I got back from Montana, I thought I was done with all my volunteering things and didn't really want to go for any bigger projects. But I was convinced to write a book. It's called Kevin's Last Walk, A Father's Final Journey with His Son. I'm going to read a couple excerpts here to close. This first part is something I call a letter from heaven. Dear Dad, first I would like to say how much I miss you and I love you. I'm sorry about what happened. You have no idea how sorry. We were just out having a good time. I didn't think anyone could get hurt. It seemed so fun. Everybody was doing it. One minute we were drinking and having a good time, and the next minute I was dead. I want you to know how hard I tried to live, how much I wanted to go back to the beginning of that night and change it all. I never believed it could happen to me. I knew people who had problems, but I wasn't one of them. I knew better. I saw guys get away with it, and I figured I could too. I had so much left to do, Dad. My life was just starting. I was looking forward to coming home and raiding the refrigerator and the pantry. I was looking forward to many more hunting trips, working on the old truck together, getting married, and giving you grandchildren. I will never get to share Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas with you again. No more gifts, no more falling asleep after Thanksgiving dinner. Tell everyone you can about what happened to me. Tell them how dangerous alcohol abuse could be and how it only takes once for something terrible to happen. Tell all the kids that what can happen is not cool and that it can happen to them. Tell them about the pain it brings family and friends. Tell them so they don't have to find out the hard way, the way I did. Something very good will come from this, Dad. I just wish I was there to share it with you. Your son, Kevin. This next piece, I call a letter to Kevin. It's the beginning of the book. Well, son, it was one incredible journey. I kept you close to me all the way. Your ashes were there in the backpack to give me strength and courage every time I spoke. We walked together through barren deserts, withering wind, snow and rainstorms, up over high mountain passes and down through beautiful sun-drenched mountain valleys for the final time. I played back so many fond memories of you as I walked. Memories of the day you were born, your many baseball and soccer games, trips to the county fair, sitting at our dinner table talking about life. I remember hugging you so tight after you graduated from high school, and yes, the last time I saw you alive. At the viewing before the memorial, I was there, but I didn't go in. I stood outside with friends and family, hugging, laughing, and crying. I chose not to see you lying in a casket, but to remember you as you lived, your love for a good laugh, a good friend, and for life. You taught me many things in life about being a father and what it means to love a child. Your death has taught me how deep that love goes and that life holds no guarantees. You taught me that God has a plan for each of us and that sometimes someone must die so that others might live. You are no longer with us physically, but you will always be there in our hearts. I would like to say, real briefly, guys, I'm begging you, don't let this happen. You do not want to go through this. Two most important decisions in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. Well, if that doesn't change your mind. Our next speaker is pretty well known in Wilmington, a good friend of the Wilmington Public Schools. A lot of the kids know who she is, what she does, what she stands for. She's very generous with her time here at Wilmington High School. Fortunately today she's a little under the weather. She's having a little difficulty today, but she's trudging hard and decided to continue with us this evening. So I am very happy to present our next speaker, without her pillow, Kara Filler.
All right, so this will be my 5th or 6th visit to Wilmington. I'm gonna keep this like the Cliff Notes version. You guys have all been in this easy bake oven for like an hour and a half now. I wanna get you out of here before we have anybody else pass out. When the ambulance showed up, every one of the administrators thought it was gonna be for me. I went to Mexico a couple weeks ago and I'm still ill. I did a presentation this morning, basically just laid on the gymnasium floor at Danvers High School. I'm going to be really quick. For the juniors and seniors at this school, you've already heard my presentation over the years at some point as an assembly in the auditorium. For the parents in the room, I just want to be a bit of a wake-up call for how important this driving substance abuse talk really is. The reality is I spend time in about 150 to 200 high schools a year in 4 countries. And I've never been to a school that hadn't lost a student before to one of those choices. And that's what life really boils down to, is all about choices. I, like Barry, have a very personal reason why I'm standing here. And this is not how my life is supposed to turn out. This is not what I thought I was going to do with my life. When I left high school, thought I was going to go to university and become a marine biologist. Basically, I wanted to go out and save the beluga whales of the planet. Because my favorite song when I was a little girl, the parents will remember this, was a song called Baby Beluga by Raffi. I am not now, nor will I ever be a marine biologist, because I'd rather spend my time in communities just like Wilmington. So I'm going to ask, like I have done at the beginning of every presentation I have done in 16 years, if you would all kindly close your eyes for a second. With your eyes closed, I'd like for you to imagine the most important person in your life. Could be a son and daughter sitting beside you. Could be a best friend, a kid you've known since kindergarten, could be a sister or brother, could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, could be a spouse. With your eyes closed, imagine what your life is without them. You come home from school to the students in the room, and your mom's not there to make you dinner or give you some big lecture about not taking the garbage out. The reason she's not there, she made a choice. That choice cost her her life. You grew up without your mom. Imagine coming to school, seniors, and your best friend doesn't sit beside you in class anymore, or on the odd occasion you may have been able to copy off his test. The reason he's not there is he too made a choice. And because of that choice, that desk will remain empty. With your eyes closed, you guys? I see eyeballs, gentlemen. Close your eyes. I caught you. With your eyes closed, I'd like for you to listen to something. Hit play for me, Bill. Thanks. Shut up. There's a gremlin in there. What was that? Try again. Nothing's on the screen. Seems like my whole day's going like this. Can you... It worked earlier. All right, maybe we won't be doing that. Okay. You got 10 seconds, dude. Because I can just stand here and talk about how crappy I feel right now. I heard that. Some mom laughed really hard on this side of the room. Thank you, Mom. Appreciate it. I've been to 4 Walgreens in 24 hours. Woo! You got it, Bill, or no? Don't worry about it if you don't. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's a no. It sounds like Alvin and the Chipmunks are doing that. Okay, don't worry about it. All right. Don't make me lose faith in you. Yeah. Okay. Guys, what I'm trying to have you hear is a commercial. It's a traffic safety commercial from Canada where I grew up. I apologize in advance for the Canadian.
Thank you so much. Maren, I'm right here. You're gonna be fine. The ambulance is here. Don't worry. They'll get you out. I'll take you home. I'm not leaving you. Come on, Maren. Her name is Maren. This is my sister.
You can't go back in.
Tell him he's gonna be fine. She's leaving. Is she okay?
Bill, can you hit pause? Just pause it or turn the sound off. The reason I wanted you to hear that is every word you just heard that actress say is word for word what I said. Maren, the person they're talking about in the commercial, was my sister. And I watched my sister, my best friend, die in a car. What the commercial won't tell you, Maren was my big sister, my older sister, by all of 39 seconds. We were identical twins. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and there's a set of twins in Vancouver that I thought are the funniest set of twins on the planet. They are 2 little old lady identical twins, now in their 80s. They're about this big. They walked around Vancouver wearing matching outfits and jackets, holding hands. Maren and I thought, wow, they've obviously not been married, probably have more than 100 cats at home, but are best friends. Maren and I honestly believed we were going to be just like that. We were supposed to be best friends forever. The day after our 18th birthday, that all changed. I think it's kind of ironic, same as Barry's story. 18, we were at the mall. Nothing's supposed to happen at the mall. Maren's new boyfriend picked her up from the mall, and at 110 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone on the way home from the mall, he lost control of his car. I was the car behind them. I watched my best friend on the planet, my twin sister, die in a wreck. I never thought it was going to be me. I didn't think that... I knew he drove like a crazy man. Maren and I made tons of decisions growing up, hundreds of different times, putting ourselves at risk thinking we're supposed to grow old. As a parent, I'm a parent now, that's what we do. Sometimes we nag, sometimes we give the big mom-dad talk to our kids for one reason. Our kids are supposed to get old like us and tell their grandkids one day how they had to walk to school barefoot in the snow 5 miles up a hill both ways. You all laugh, you did the same thing. Ride a horse like your son, right? Ride a horse to school. Guys, my sister's not gonna have any kids. 4 choices could have stopped that car crash from happening. 4 very simple choices. If you remember from the assembly, we had time together over the last couple of years. I'm gonna go over them really, really fast. These 4 choices could save your life if you choose to remember them. Option number 1 is always about not putting ourselves at risk in the first place. It's not about not having any fun in the world. It's about having a good time safely. If you know somebody drives like an idiot, don't get in the car. There's always another way to the party. There's always another way to school. There's always another way to the sporting event. Be creative. Find another way there. There's always another way there. Ride your bike, take a bus, crawl there if you have to. I don't care. Just don't put yourself in a car that drives like that. Option number 2. What if you already find yourself in a vehicle driven by someone who shouldn't be driving? Really simple. Get out of the car. But the most important part of option number 2 is always to make the car stop first. That is an important road safety decision. Don't throw yourselves into moving vehicles. Option number 2 is not only about speaking up for yourself. It's about sticking your neck out for your friends. And that's what I know Barry is begging you to do, is stick your neck out for your friends. If you're ever at a party, not that that would ever happen in high school, but if you're there and someone was drinking, I don't care if it's a parent, an uncle, a sibling, hide their car keys on them. My favorite place to hide car keys in the house is the toilet. I'm not talking about the toilet bowl, people, that's disgusting. Little keys floating around. I'm talking about the toilet tank on the wall. Lift the tank lid, put all the keys in the tank, put the tank lid back down. No one in their right mind is going to look in the toilet tank for their car keys unless they attended the mandatory parents' night at Wilmington High School. But it's also a good, but please remember, Not all clickers are waterproof. If they have clickers, automatic start clickers, automatic door clickers, please put them in Ziploc bags first before you throw the keys in the toilet, because if you don't, that'll be a nice, expensive learning opportunity for you. I had to replace 5 of them in one night at a party. Option number 3, parents, I apologize in advance. I'm going to teach your kids how to lie. Now, I don't like to use the word lie because lying sounds so evil. We don't lie in high school, students. No, no. We are masters of the fib. We fib about why our homework's not done, why we're late for school, where we really are on the weekends. Because I'm sure your parents believe it like mine did when I said I was sleeping over at my best friend's house working on some project for school. These, however, are my favorite 3 fibs. Very quickly, they're called the 3 Ps for easy reference. For those of you who are like, I remember the 3 Ps. Pee, puke, and period. All 3 of those things will make a car stop immediately and let the passenger out. I'm not going to pee dance tonight or pretend that I'm going to throw up because I actually feel like that might happen, so I don't think that acting that out is going to help me in any way, shape, or form right now. Option number 4, you guys, for all the parents in the room, this is where you come in. Option number 4 has always been and will always be about picking up the phone and calling you. My mom was always on the receiving end of that phone call. Did it guarantee my sister's safety? No. But she picked up that phone, even into our mid-20s, for myself and all my friends. I moved out of Canada a long time ago, and my friends still called my mom in the middle of the night for a ride if they needed it. She was always on the receiving end of that phone call. Students, no matter what fib you may have told them to get there in the first place, if you're ever stuck, call your parents. They'll come pick you up. They may make you smelly breakfast tomorrow. They may give you an awesome lecture about certain things. The last thing any of your parents want, I'm gonna cry, sorry, is what Barry's family had to go through. A knock on the door in the middle of the night or in the morning saying, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry doesn't change anything. Students and parents especially, this message from tonight isn't just about the students in the room. This is all about us as a community sticking our neck out for each other. My presentation in schools all over the world has never been complicated. If you haven't already figured it out yet, I'm not an overly complicated person. My presentation has always very simply been about sticking your neck out for people you care about. Because I wish every day of my life I'd stuck my neck out a little further. There's going to come a day really soon, you guys, I can't do this anymore. 16 years of speaking, schools all over the world, and all I want to do is be a mom. I have a 6-year-old, he's in kindergarten this year, he's the world's cutest 6-year-old. I know I'm probably slightly biased. Of course I think he's gorgeous, I'm his mom. He could look like a troll, I would not know the difference. He doesn't look like a troll. He's also the world's largest 6-year-old. My husband's 6'5", I'm 6 feet tall, like I was expecting a small child. As tall as we are, I still was not expecting gigantor for a son. Jackson's 6, he's in kindergarten, he's 4'7". All the parents are like, what? He's pushing 80 pounds in kindergarten, 4'7". And I get a lot of this all the time. Wow, he's so special. He is. He's also 6 and thinks he's a dinosaur. Give him a break. He walks up to people all the time. I'm a T-Rex. Roar! People are terribly confused because he looks like a 12-year-old running around growling at everyone. I want to be that mom though, you guys. I want to be that mom that sits in a bleacher during a high school basketball game with my 7-foot-tall kid on the floor with a sweatshirt with his sumo wrestler baby picture on it that says Jackson's mom yelling at the ref. I want to be that mom. And there's going to come a day really soon, you guys, like I have to walk away. This presentation tonight, the social host piece, Barry's incredibly moving piece about losing his son Kevin, isn't about you not having any fun. This is about you all having a good time safely. All I'm asking you to do is stick your neck out for your friends. There's only 2 things that stop car crashes from happening every day. It doesn't matter where you live. 2 things. Each driver's common sense and a white or yellow line this big. When people decide to speed, drink and drive, smoke whatever it is they decided to smoke and drive anyway, text message while they're driving, we throw common sense out the window. And the only thing we all bet our lives on is a white or yellow line this big. That's it. People call it an accident all the time. I hear your sister died in an accident. If you actually look up the definition of the word accident in a dictionary, it says something unpreventable, like stubbing your toe on a coffee table, tripping up the flight of stairs, falling off the stage, which unfortunately I have done more than once in front of large groups of people. That's an accident. When a plane crashes and tragically people die, we don't call it a plane accident. We lose more people your age in car crashes every day in this country than we do worldwide year-round in plane crashes. And we still use the word accident. Because it helps us all accept the fact that it happens every day. So I have a question for you. It's not complicated. Ready? If it happened to the person that you thought of when you closed your eyes, would you accept it? I don't. That's why I'm standing here thousands of miles away from home. I've become incredibly good friends with your administrators. And the only reason I got on a plane yesterday to fly across from Portland, Oregon, where I live now, was because I couldn't let Wilmington High School down. I love your school, I love your community, and I've had the privilege to know some of your students along the way. Please, you guys, just stick your neck out for each other. I know it's not always easy, and I know it's not always popular, but it's the right thing to do. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Kara. Trying to wind this down, this project was funded by the local school district budget, an innovative teacher grant from the School to Business Partnership, and local donations. I'd also like to thank the Wildcat Project Committee coordinators, Ms. Deb Deacon, Assistant Principal, and Doreen Crow, the Wilmington Public Schools Nurse Leader. The Wilmington High School and Middle School SAD chapters, Wilmington Superintendent Joanne Benton, Wilmington Town Manager Mike Kyra. I'd like to thank our school committee for their support. There's several members in the audience this evening. Also, Senator Bruce Tarr is with us this evening. Thank you. Thank the Wilmington High School custodial staff, the Wilmington Police and Fire Department, who are always around to help us out when we need a hand. Members of the Bill Ricker House of Correction who support our program. And all of you who take the time to make sure your sons and daughters are here and they're safe and they're ready to move forward with all that they do in their wonderful 4 years here at Wilmington High School and their years beyond. We'd like to ask that once you're completed with this, after you go home tonight or tomorrow, after you talk about some of the things, you could complete our prom program survey. It is located on the Wilmington High School website. It'll only take a few minutes. It helps us to get some feedback for next year's program. And yes, one of those things will be, was the air conditioning. Do we have raffles? Okay, let's skip that part. And then to close out the evening, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody that came to present this evening. Can we please give them one more round of applause? And to everyone attending the junior prom, your tickets can be picked up in the cafeteria. Tables will be in alphabetical order. I'd like to thank you all for your patience and attendance this evening. We look forward to a great, wonderful prom season. Thank you.